We need House Republicans to come back to Washington, D.C. End your 4-week vacation. Enough already. We as Democrats, House Democrats, Senate Democrats, are ready to sit down anytime, any place with anyone here at the Capitol or over at the White House to negotiate a bipartisan agreement, reopen the government so we can pay our hard-working federal employees, while at the same time, we need to decisively address the Republican health care crisis. It's crushing people all across the country. Meanwhile, Donald Trump and Republicans on Capitol Hill are nowhere to be found, have zero interest in actually addressing this issue. That's a shame. Today's inflation numbers of 3% year over year confirm what hardworking American taxpayers already know, that Donald Trump and Republican policies are making life too expensive in the United States of America. Donald Trump and Republicans promise that costs will go down on day one, but costs haven't gone down in the United States of America. Costs are going up. Inflation is up, the highest number since January of this year. Housing costs are too high. Grocery costs are too high. Electricity bills are through the roof. And now, because of the Republican refusal to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, tens of millions of Americans are receiving notices right now that their health care premiums are about to skyrocket. In some instances, everyday Americans are going to pay $1,000 or $2,000 more per month. That is unsustainable in an environment where people are already struggling to live paycheck to paycheck, can't thrive, and can barely survive. We need House Republicans to come back to Washington, D.C. End your 4-week vacation. Enough already. We as Democrats, House Democrats, Senate Democrats, are ready to sit down anytime, any place with anyone here at the Capitol or over at the White House to negotiate a bipartisan agreement, reopen the government so we can pay our hard-working federal employees, while at the same time, we need to decisively address the Republican health care crisis. It's crushing people all across the country. Meanwhile, Donald Trump and Republicans on Capitol Hill are nowhere to be found, have zero interest in actually addressing this issue. That's a shame. Questions?
Leader Jeffries. The New York mayoral race early voting, as you know, starts tomorrow. Are you ready to endorse Mamdani it?
Stay tuned.
Leader Jeffries.
We are now at this point, day 24 of the shutdown. SNAP benefits are running out. People are starting to go without paychecks again. Now insurance premiums are already starting to go out. Republicans continue to say they're not going to do anything until the government is reopened. Is there a point where you just have to accept reopen the government?
The problem that the country confronts right now is that Donald Trump and Republicans decided to shut the government down. Like, what's unclear about the fact that Republicans have the House, the Senate, and the presidency? And from the very beginning of this year, they've taken a my way or the highway approach, have steamrolled the country in all of the things, jamming their right-wing ideology down the throats of the American people. And now Republicans are claiming that they're helpless. The problem that we have right now is that House Republicans refuse to come back. They've literally been on vacation for 4 consecutive weeks. Donald Trump has found all of the time in the world to play golf. He can try to extort $230 million to line his pockets from the Department of Injustice. Somehow the Trump administration found $40 billion to bail out a right-wing wannabe dictator in Argentina, but can't find a dime to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits in order to make life and health care more affordable for hardworking American taxpayers. And Donald Trump is demolishing parts of the White House in real time. Why? So he can construct some gaudy ballroom where he can be celebrated as if he was a king. All of this has been happening during the 24 days of the Trump Republican shutdown. But they can't find a moment to talk with Democrats to find a bipartisan solution forward to reopen the government and to address the healthcare crisis that they are inflicting on the American people. That's why we find ourselves in this situation, and we need Republican support for a bipartisan path forward in order to get out of this situation.
Leader Jeffries,
Yeah.
you just said that you would stay tuned on a Mamdani announcement. What more do you need to hear at this point? How many more conversations do you need to have? Why are you
Same answer.
refusing to endorse?
Same answer.
Why are you refusing to endorse?
I have not refused to endorse. I have refused to articulate my position, and I will momentarily at some point in advance of early voting.
Leader Jeffries,
Thank you.
Leader Jeffries. Thank you, Leader Jeffries. There are some bipartisan talks going on in the Senate on trying to pay federal workers that are currently furloughed right now. Would you support any legislation that comes out of the Senate, and are you aware of any talks, similar talks happening in the House between House Republicans and House Democrats?
Yeah, we're prepared to support any bipartisan legislation that comes out of the Senate that is designed to decisively address the Republican health care crisis, reopen the government, and enact a bipartisan spending agreement that actually makes life better for the American people. That's what we're prepared to support.
Leader
Go ahead.
Jeffries, good morning. I understand the Democrats' position on health care and Obamacare here, but with the open enrollment period starting on the 1st, hasn't that ship legislatively sailed?
No, the challenge is going to become even more significant for Congress and the President to deal with if this government shutdown drags on to November 1st. Open enrollment starts on November 1st. At that point in time, Americans all across the country are going to begin to further realize that their premiums, copays, and deductibles are going to skyrocket. And why is that happening? Because Republicans decided earlier this year that they'd rather gut Medicaid and then provide massive tax breaks to their billionaire donors, make those tax breaks permanent, but now, as we approach open enrollment, have zero interest in actually extending Affordable Care Act tax credits that benefit working families, middle-class families, and everyday Americans. And so the crisis has grown worse because of Republican inaction over the last several weeks. And if we get to November 1st and we hit open enrollment and Republicans have still refused to act with respect to the Affordable Care Act tax credits, I think that's going to increase the intensity and need for urgent legislative action to take place.
Is retroactivity viable?
Yes,
Explain.
yes.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Senator Thune has maintained that he believes the path out of this shutdown will come from rank-and-file members in the Senate, bipartisan conversations, maybe even a gang. You and Leader Schumer have maintained that the path out of this is with the conversation with the president. Can you help kind of reconcile the position that Leader Thune has in that things will come up from bipartisan rank-and-file conversations, and you saying that Democrats need to talk to the president? Why do you think that there's a gap between how you both see the path out of the shutdown?
Well, Republicans in the House and the Senate, from the very beginning of the Trump presidency, haven't functioned like they are a separate and co-equal branch of government. What we've seen from Republicans in the House and the Senate is that they behave like a wholly owned subsidiary of Donald Trump and the Trump cartel. That's how they behave. A reckless rubber stamp for Donald Trump's extreme agenda, even when they're hurting their own constituents, because that's what Republicans did in the one big ugly bill, largest cut to Medicaid in American history, ripped food from the mouths of children, seniors, and hungry veterans. And as a result of Republican policies that they rubber stamped, what we've seen is that hospitals, nursing homes, and community-based health centers are closing in their own communities. And they can care less, because when Donald Trump says jump, they simply respond, boss, how high? That's how Republicans have operated during the entirety of this presidency. And so, of course, our position has been, and I said this directly to the president with Johnson and Thune right next to me, this does not get resolved until you decide to give permission to Republicans on Capitol Hill to negotiate a bipartisan resolution.
Jeffries, thank you. What is your reaction to now the third strike against suspected drug boats in the Caribbean just this week?
Well, it certainly is the case that we need to see the information from the administration justifying these strikes, both in terms of substance and in terms of the legal authority that they believe authorizes them in the absence of congressional action. Part of the problem that we have with House Republicans being on vacation for the last 4 weeks is that we don't even have the opportunity for the House to be briefed in its entirety on matters of domestic policy, and in this particular instance, on matters of national security, because House Republicans are gone. It's extraordinary. They've been on vacation for 4 weeks. They're getting paid for doing nothing, and then House Republicans are forcing hardworking federal employees to either be furloughed without pay or to work without pay, while they've refused week after week after week to show up. Mike Johnson needs to bring Republicans back now. Enough. This is ridiculous.
Lady Jeffries.
Yep.
Thank you, Leader. So you just said that Republicans are hurting their own constituents, and I understand that SNAP is a broad issue that affects millions, but in your home state alone, 3 million people are expected to lose their benefits next month. And you say you're ready to accept anything bipartisan out of the Senate. We have 3 Democrats who are voting for this right now.
We said, no. I said we're ready to consider anything that emerges in a bipartisan way in good faith from the Senate.
Thank you. Regardless, this is still a bipartisan effort right now to extend Biden's funding levels. If Democrats continue to not vote, reach the 60-vote filibuster, then does the party take this fallout responsibility?
No, and I disagree with the premise that we're extending Biden funding levels. That's a Republican talking point. This is not that complicated to understand. That in December of 2024, a bipartisan spending bill was enacted, overwhelmingly passed in the House and the Senate, signed into law by President Joe Biden. That was in December of 2024. Donald Trump supported that agreement after detonating the original bipartisan agreement. In March of 2025, a partisan Republican spending bill was enacted that lowered the spending levels, and in our view, as Democrats, which is why in the House we overwhelmingly opposed it, hurt veterans, hurt nutritional assistance, hurt housing affordability, and hurt health care. That's why we opposed it, because that March spending bill wasn't Biden-level spending, it was Trump partisan-level spending, which they further aggravated by engaging in impoundments and rescissions in violation of the law in the 6 months that followed that March spending bill, partisan Republican spending bill, being jammed down the throats of the American people. So, first of all, we've made clear we will not support a partisan Republican spending bill that continues to gut the health care of the American people. We've been saying that for 6 weeks. We have not moved off of our position. We're going to continue to defend the health care of working class Americans, middle class Americans, and everyday Americans. Thanks.
Do you have anything positive to say about Mamdani, and do you recognize that your refusal to do so is splitting the Democratic Party?
I traveled throughout the country, and the Democratic Party is as unified as I've seen us throughout the entirety of this year, and you're about to experience that in real time. This won't be hypothetical. You're about to see it in real time in Virginia, in New Jersey, and in California as it relates to Prop 50. As I've said, I will have more to say about the mayor's race when I have more to say about the mayor's race in advance of early voting when I'm back home tomorrow.
What is the strategy behind waiting until the 11th hour to weigh in on the New York mayor's race?
This question has been asked and answered repeatedly. Thanks.
Virginia is now entering the redistricting arena. They're planning to redraw House maps. So what do you make of this ongoing
We have made clear that Donald Trump is trying to rig the midterm elections by gerrymandering congressional maps all across the country, and Democrats are going to continue to respond immediately, forcefully, and consistently with our view that the American people in a midterm election deserve free and fair elections, not rigged elections. And that's what Donald Trump is trying to do. The question that has to be asked is if all of the bravado that we see from Donald Trump, from Mike Johnson, from House and Senate Republicans, if all of the bravado is true, why are they engaging in unprecedented efforts to gerrymander congressional maps as part of some toxic scheme to rig the midterm elections? Here's the answer. Because Mike Johnson knows the House is gone as it relates to Republicans. Gone. Because they have failed to deliver for the American people. They haven't made life better for everyday Americans. They've made life better for their billionaire donors. That's what the one big ugly bill was about. Inflation through the roof. Costs out of control. Trump tariffs costing the American people thousands of dollars more per year in expense. And now they're about to jack up premiums, copays, and deductibles on top of what they've already done to health care, which includes the largest cut to Medicaid in American history, a possible $536 billion cut to Medicare at the end of this year, hospitals and nursing homes and community-based health centers closing because of Republican policies throughout the country, vaccines no longer available in the manner that they should, kids having to be held out from school in places like South Carolina and beyond. This is a five-alarm fire in healthcare that Republicans have created. And that's why Republicans are gerrymandering congressional maps in places all across the country. But here's the thing. They did not expect Democrats to be able to forcefully respond. But the stakes are too high. And we are not going to unilaterally disarm, and we will not let Republicans mathematically change the congressional map so they can artificially hold on to power when the American people are ready to throw them out of office.
What actions are House Democrats, the Democratic leadership in general, taking to ensure SNAP benefits be paid in November? And are you confident that recipients will receive their benefits even if the government is still shut down?
The Trump administration has the resources now, including through an emergency contingency fund that has about $5 billion in it, to ensure that not a single American goes hungry if they refuse to reopen the government on November 1st. Not a single American should go hungry. And the challenge that we confront right now is that Donald Trump and Republicans on Capitol Hill are trying to weaponize hunger in order to jam their extreme right-wing policies in their spending bill down the throats of the American people. That's unacceptable. That's un-American. That's unconscionable. That Republicans are actually trying to weaponize hunger across the country. And here's the thing. This group of people, these extremists on the other side of the aisle, we will not let them lecture the American people about nutritional assistance when in their one big ugly bill, they cut $186 billion. These are Republicans this year, $186 billion from the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program. That's the largest SNAP cut in American history. And people ought to believe right now that Republicans actually care about hunger when they ripped food away from the mouths of hungry children, seniors, families, women, and veterans to provide massive tax breaks to their billionaire donors. Get lost with that in terms of Republican spin. The American people are not buying it. Thank you, everyone.